Evening. All right, simple tactic for you today is quite honestly one that baffles me why so many people don't do it, which is every squad should be set up with a tank. And it's funny, when I look back on the many hours of footage we've got, the ones where we do quite well is where we have either, well, a tank supporting us and, you know, and ideally a dropship as well, because I think people too often just run a squad of 6 and it's all about, you know, assault rifle infantry, blah, blue, blue. And I don't think a lot of people maybe factor in that having just a very strong tanker in the gang is going to bring you dividends as well. So that's really what today's topic is about. I think the makeup of the gang is also quite an interesting one. The corporations that really do quite well at, I imagine PC, but certainly when you meet them in the general game, have got defined roles for each of the gangs. So they probably set up the gang. We don't do this. We should, but we don't. Or rather, maybe we do this subconsciously, but I think certainly currently we don't say, right, you know, room for 3, need tank, or, you know, need a dropship pilot, something like that. We don't. We just say, you know, anyone want a gang? Okay, let's go. And that's because we play in a much more casual way. But I think if you want to kind of thrive to survive, or, you know, succeed, let's say, then what you need to have is going to be that that really good mix of suits, really good mix of vehicles and transport, etc. And this is where I think every gang should have a tank within it. Now, certainly when we run, you know, gangs that do have a tank, what we find is very rarely are we kind of redlined. If anything, it's usually the other way around, because the tanks, you know, particularly if you've got a very good strong tanker. We've got AP Grasshopper here. This man is insane, literally. He's the scariest Madruga pilot I've ever met, and it's because he's very good with it. And I think this is certainly a benefit and boon to the team. And I would suggest that a lot of the time it is worth, you know, when you set up the gang, the first person you should put in there is going to be a tanker. And I think a lot of the time the limitations to tanking is because of the price. So people obviously get a little bit kind of concerned at the price. But again, if you have a gang that's kind of working together and, you know, and at least willing to kind of work together, let's say, you can actually suggest that everybody chips in for the tank if it's lost. So, you know, everybody within a round, let's say you've got 6 people and they all earn, you know, 200k, 250k, whatever per match. That means everybody can cover the loss of a tank each round as well, but not that you're going to lose a tank each round if you're very careful. So, you know, it's well worth considering setting up a gang with a bit more thought. I would recommend this as a tactic, and I think for me, you know, we're starting to do this a little bit more. So obviously when I generally start a gang, the first thing I'm going to think is, okay, who's in the gang and what do I know that they'll do? So I know that, okay, so-and-so is a scouter. I know that, you know, if I've got Evo in the gang, then I know that that's a dropship and tank pilot right there. So, you know, you look for those kind of characteristics. And certainly, when, you know, if we gang with AP Grasshopper, we know that we've got a very strong Madruga. And I think, you know, a Del Boy as well, he'll bring a gun logi, and, you know, Amnol Singh, he'll bring obviously a really good Madruga as well. So, you know, there's a really good kind of, you know, having a knowledge of certain who and what people will bring is obviously really good. And I think certainly gangs benefit from this, you know, even if it's just transport, so dropships. It's amazing how many gangs will go into a game and then they'll realise actually nobody in the gang can fly a dropship or even has one fit. So it's always a bit of a funny thing, really. If you don't cater for the whole gang, you're going to have a bad time. Now, interestingly enough, I think that vehicles in this game are massively underrated. Everybody knows that tanks are strong, everybody knows that dropships are useful, etc., but the cost is prohibitive to them. So it's funny because I was playing Planetside recently, don't ask me why, and I've got to admit, everybody was spamming vehicles. It was, you know, and Battlefield 4, everybody grabs the vehicles, they hurtle them as fast as they can towards the enemy and get them blown up and run off. You know, the vehicles are cheap. Literally, they're free in these games. Whereas I think certainly in Dust, vehicles are not cheap and vehicles are not expendable. They are, I think, precious to a lot of people because it's annoying as balls when you lose a million ISK tank. Trust me, I know. And I think this is maybe prohibitive to their use. So, you know, certainly back in the day when, I mean, I'm talking probably maybe a year ago now, tanks were ridiculously difficult to kill, and I do mean like crazy. That, you know, and tanks were spammed everywhere, and pretty much if somebody brought in a tank in the round, you could not combat it. I can't tell you why, because I don't think tanks have been boosted or anything. I think just back then, people maybe didn't have the skills in swarm launches, maybe they didn't have certainly the skills in the forge gun, and it just felt like, you know, every time somebody brought in a tank, all we used to do was hide. Now, again, I don't know why, I couldn't tell you why, but nowadays it's the other way around. If somebody brings in a tank, everybody runs to get their swarm launchers, they get their AV grenades, whatever, and they start literally chipping away at this tank, which is probably how it's meant to be. I don't have an opinion on if they're overpowered now or not, but I would certainly suggest that I think people have stopped bringing them in en masse like they used to because of this factor. Militia tanks are also terrible, so people generally don't bring in militia anymore. If you bring in a Seeker or a Soma, usually the first thing you'll find is that people see it as a free kill and they will run right at you to kill you, which actually can be exploited. I've got a really nice Seeker fit that I call in when people are obviously looking for easy kills, and then they're quite surprised that actually this thing's got a hell of a shield and packs quite a punch. But again, I think that tank only costs me 180k, I think it is, maybe 150, I can't remember, but it's cheap, and it's really, really cheap, and it's quite good. So I think a lot of the time people are a little bit just, I think, you know, scared to bring in tanks. I think, you know, the whole game has just, you know, revolved back to being a formidably strong infantry shooter, if you know what I mean. Like, everybody's doing infantry. And I think vehicles are just a nicety again, which is a shame. I think vehicles would be good. You know, I think the whole kind of practice to make vehicles fun again is a really important program, because the reality is that vehicles aren't terribly fun if you're losing them quite a lot. So with my my assault dropship is a prime example here. I love that thing. I literally would love to have a little 3D printed toy of it on my desk. I think it's awesome. But it's annoying as balls when one forge gun will keep you from even doing anything in the whole game. I don't say that's broken. That's kind of what they're designed to do. But yeah, it can get a bit annoying. It does feel a bit flimsy, let's say. And I think certainly there's certain issues with vehicles that do make them slightly gimped, let's say. But again, we'll see how this develops in 1.7, because obviously 1.7 is going to bring a huge redux of you know, the vehicles. So I think we're going to see quite an interesting you know, development of them. I'm curious to see what they'll do. I think the challenge they're going to have is making vehicles obviously, you know, more, I think, more in line, so you won't have infinite ammo. The tanking's going to be different, and the problem is there is a chance that the changes could slay vehicles completely. You know, people will just say, well, I like my Madruga, I would lose one or two, well, you know, one every 2 or 3 games, but now if I'm going to lose one every game, then I can't, you know, it's just unviable at that point. And that is a big risk of this change. I think it's also a big fear that, to be honest, if they, you know, there are some people who are so good with vehicles they never lose one, and they are not the norm. They are the ones that are very good with it. And I think to make, you know, to kind of nerf them is going to absolutely nerf everybody else who is not brilliant with it and just enjoys them. So I really look forward to see how they're going to do it. I think 1.7 really could be make or break for vehicles. I think it could make vehicles, you know, explode, and people would have, like, you know, much more use of tanks, much more use of LAVs, etc. Or it could literally destroy them to the point where nobody wants to use one because they're just too prohibitive in their cost. Interesting times. I think we'll see how this one develops, certainly in 1.7, which I'm assured is coming very soon. We'll do a tactics redo of the whole vehicles when 1.7 hits. We'll try and show, I think, how vehicles are going to work, but I await it with eagerness. So, in terms of this map, and I guess in conclusion, what we generally have got is a game that is very, very nicely set up for vehicles in terms of the competition. So, you know, playing PlanetSide, playing Battlefield 4, you know, the vehicles in that game are they're just literally scenery almost. Whereas in this, I think they have given the vehicles weight, they've given them a punch, and they've given them frailty. So they've done a good job with the coding of them. I'm curious to see how they will be developed more so. And I think from a tactical point of view, you should be using, you know, at least one tanker per match in each squad. If you can, if you're pretty good, then you can obviously cover the cost of that tank should it be lost. So you see here I got 255k. Then, you know, between the 6 of you, you can easily cover the cost of a tank, because that tank will likely win you the match. So there we go. I think it's a funny sort of situation, really, that people are really a bit scared to bring in tanks. But hey, I understand it because I don't do it either, and yet I've got all the money of dust, and yet I still do not want to use tanks that much. So there we go. Quick shout out, squadb.com. I know I keep harping on about it. If you're watching these videos, it's our website. We're proud of it. I'm going to do an article on tanks. So if you want to read more about the sort of crazed, lunering, gibberish speak of Pyrex, then go to squadb.com and read our article. Hope you enjoyed that. See you next time.